Welcome to your Cyber Tips Explainer, where we make everyday people understand the cyber world around us. Okay, let's get started. Have you felt it? You know, that strange hum in the air? A feeling that the concrete and steel all around you are waking up? See, the streetlight on your corner isn't just a light anymore. The bus you take, not just a vehicle. Even the trash can on the sidewalk isn't a simple object. They're all developing senses. They're becoming the eyes, the ears, the nerve endings of this vast interconnected organism. Your city is becoming a living thing.
It watches, it listens, and you know, with every single step you take, it learns. It knows the moment you leave for work, the cafe where you grab your coffee, the path you walk home at night. It's building a memory, a consciousness, based entirely on the rhythm of your life. And this new reality, well, it brings us face to face with the two most chilling questions of our time. As this urban organism stirs to life, what exactly is it thinking? And maybe more importantly, who is teaching it? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the promise and the peril of the smart city. You know, the story begins, like so many great mysteries, with a beautiful dream, a utopian vision sold to us by corporate storytellers, folks like IBM. They called it the smart planet, a world without friction, without waste, without delay. I mean, they painted this absolute masterpiece of a future with seamless, efficient, connected cities. And let's be real, who could possibly say no to that? And here it is, the official blueprint for that dream. According to its architects, a smart city makes optimal use of all the interconnected information available to better understand and control its operations and optimize the use of limited resources. The language here is so deliberate. It speaks of logic, of optimization, of control. It promises a city run not by the messy emotions and compromises of human politics, but by the clean, supposedly infallible logic of data.
And the benefits they were proposing, they are undeniably seductive. Just imagine it for a second. Traffic lights that actually anticipate the flow of cars, dissolving bottlenecks and clearing the air of pollution. Waste bins that send a signal for pickup only when they're actually full. This isn't science fiction, by the way. In South Bend, Indiana, smart sewer tech has already saved the city nearly $450 million. It's a vision of a perfectly tuned machine, where daily life is just effortless. A perfect world, meticulously engineered for our comfort and convenience. A seamless, efficient world. What could possibly go wrong? In the biting cold of a December winter, back in 2015, 225,000 people in Ukraine found out that's what. In an instant, their lights went out, their heat died, their world was plunged into a sudden, terrifying darkness. And it wasn't a blizzard. It wasn't a blown transformer. It was an attack. This was the moment the dream turned into an absolute nightmare. The moment a threat in the digital world crossed over, violently, into our physical one. In Ukraine, attackers turned the city's own smart grid into a weapon, using its network to flip the switches. Fast forward to 2021, in Oldsmar, Florida. A hacker broke into the water treatment system and tried to jack up the level of sodium hydroxide, that's lye, to poisonous levels. And looking ahead, experts warn that GPS spoofing, which is basically sending fake satellite signals to fool navigation systems, could be used to deliberately drive every single self-driving car in a city into one, paralyzing gridlock. The threat isn't just about data anymore. It's kinetic. It's real. And this slide, it just reveals a chilling irony. When cybersecurity experts were asked to rank the biggest risks in a smart city, what do you think they chose? Right at the very top of the list were the systems designed to protect us. Emergency alert systems, street surveillance, smart traffic lights. The very tools that are meant to create order are also the most potent weapons for chaos. And this just perfectly illustrates the terrifying duality at the very heart of this new world. The exact same network that can intelligently reroute power to prevent a blackout is the very same network an intruder can use to cause one. Every single tool of convenience is also, potentially, a weapon. But as terrifying as a citywide blackout or a poisoned water supply might be, these physical dangers, they're really only the tip of the iceberg. They're the loud, violent symptoms of a much deeper condition. The most profound threat is the one you can't see. It's silent, it's invisible, and it's happening all around us right now. To really get it, we need a new name for the beast, a term coined by the scholar Shoshana Zuboff, surveillance capitalism. It's a new economic logic, a new kind of marketplace that doesn't trade in goods or services, it trades in us. It is an entire system built on one single thing, extracting our personal data to build products that can predict and ultimately control our actions. So this is the crucial point right here. There are two paths your data can take. On one path, let's call it informationing. Data is used to help you. So think of a music app learning what you like so it can suggest a new song. The data is reinvested to improve your experience. On this path, you are the subject. But then there's the other path, the path of behavioral surplus. This is where companies collect data far beyond anything they need to serve you. Your location, your tone of voice, even your hesitation at an intersection. This surplus data is the real prize. It's sold to create entirely new markets that literally bet on what you will do next. On this path, you are no longer the subject. You've become the object, a resource to be mined. And here is the philosophical earthquake at the center of this new age. As Zuboff writes, the world at large is redisclosed as having been information all along, in a perpetual state of waiting to be harvested. That quiet walk you took in the park, that private conversation with a friend on a bench, your momentary glance at a storefront, these aren't just human experiences anymore. They are now raw materials, assets on a balance sheet, just waiting for collection. This total transformation of our world into data has built a brand new kind of structure in our cities. It's an architecture that was first imagined by the philosopher Jeremy Bentham as the perfect prison, the Panopticon. A place where the inmates can never know if they are being watched at any given moment, and so they learn to behave as if they are always being watched. Welcome to the Digital Panopticon. So how does this digital prison actually operate? Let's take a look at its first weapon, predictive policing. I mean, the name itself sounds like something straight out of science fiction. The idea of using data and algorithms to stop crime before it even happens. But the reality is a grim reflection of our past. These systems are trained on historical crime data, which is already soaked in decades of human prejudice. The machine doesn't understand justice. It only knows the data we feed it. And the result? The algorithms simply learn our old biases and project them into the future, sending more police into already over-policed minority communities. In Chicago, gunfire detection systems like ShotSpotter were overwhelmingly deployed in Black and Latino neighborhoods. This kind of algorithmically justified saturation created the very conditions that led to the tragic police shooting of 13-year-old Adam Toledo. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of suspicion, written in code. The second weapon in this arsenal is even more intimate because it targets the one thing that is uniquely, biologically ours, our face. We're told this technology is objective, but the numbers, wow, they tell a devastating story. A landmark MIT study found that for light-skinned men, the error rate was less than 1%. But for dark-skinned women, it was over 20%. 20%. Now, that isn't a bug in the system, it is a feature of a system trained on a flawed and biased world. And that 20% isn't just a statistic. It is a wrongful arrest, it is a life destroyed, it's a profound injustice delivered with the cold, unfeeling authority of an algorithm. And this broken technology is being unleashed all over the globe as a tool of political control. It's used to identify and track Black Lives Matter protesters in America. It's used to watch citizens at polling stations in India. In Iran, the state uses it on traffic cameras to enforce hijab laws on women. And in China, it's an essential component in the state's brutal oppression of ethnic minorities like the Uyghurs. And this is what the Digital Panopticon truly is. It's not just one camera or one sensor. It is the system. It's the camera in the streetlight, the microphone in the kiosk, the license plate reader on the highway, all networked together, all feeding one vast knowing mind. It creates a state of permanent visibility that chills free expression, that discourages dissent, that quietly shapes our behavior until we learn to police ourselves. We become our own prison guards. This leads us to the most dangerous intersection of all. The boundary between corporate power and state power is just dissolving. The same companies that harvest our lives for profit are selling their tools of prediction and control to governments. So when these two immense forces merge into one, what happens to the very idea of democracy? We're seeing the birth of what scholars call the post-political city. This is a place where fundamental public debates, like how should our neighborhoods be policed, or what should our public squares be used for, are no longer considered political questions for us to decide together. Instead, they're reframed as technical problems to be solved by private companies using their secret proprietary algorithms. Public debate gets replaced by a dashboard. The city council gets outsourced to the control room. The philosopher Hannah Arendt, who actually escaped Nazi Germany, she saw this danger decades ago. She warned that totalitarianism could not exist without destroying the public realm of life, because it's in that public realm,
in the messy, unpredictable human debates in our streets and our town squares, that we learn how to be citizens. By transforming that public realm into a space of constant surveillance and technical management, we risk destroying, as she says, our very capacity to be political animals. If you really want to see where this road could ultimately lead, you need to know about a pretty disturbing proposal that's gaining influence in some corners of Silicon Valley. It's a concept called the Praxis Network State.
Now, it's really crucial to understand this is a concept. It's not a reality yet. But it's a powerful and frankly terrifying illustration of where these trends could end. The vision is for a new kind of city-state run entirely by AI, but its core ideology is just bleak. It sees a planet in crisis not to be saved for all of us, but to be survived by a select few. Its stated goal is to catalyze a post-human future. It is the dream of pure optimization taken to its most extreme, anti-democratic, and inhuman conclusion. So when you put all these pieces together, the anatomy of this potential dystopia becomes terrifyingly clear. You've got pervasive surveillance eroding our fundamental freedoms. You've got biased algorithms locking in old injustices. You have centralized systems that create a single point of catastrophic failure. Corporate control that places profit above people. And the digital divide, which creates a whole new underclass, cut off from the services and benefits of the very city they call home. The picture we've painted tonight is dark. It can feel overwhelming, suffocating, I know, which leads to the single most important question we could possibly ask. Is this future inevitable? And the answer, with every fiber of our being, has to be no. It is not inevitable. The future of our city is being written in code, that's true. But that code can be rewritten. The future isn't some destination we just arrive at. It's a home that we have to build together. And we actually have a blueprint for that construction. We have to insist on ethical frameworks before a single sensor is installed. We must demand genuine citizen engagement, not just some slick presentations from tech vendors. We have to build robust data security and privacy into the foundations. We must relentlessly audit these algorithms for their biases. And we have to work to close the digital divide, to make sure that the wonders of technology are shared by everyone, not just a privileged few.
Look, this isn't just some hopeful theory. There are cities around the world that are actively forging a different path. And one of the most powerful and inspiring examples is Barcelona, with its groundbreaking work on what it calls a municipal data commons. In Barcelona, they're building a totally different reality. They treat the city's data not as a private commodity to be extracted and sold, but as a public resource, like water or a park, to be managed by and for the citizens. They promote open source technologies that everyone can see and scrutinize, not secret black boxes. Their goal is something they call digital sovereignty, the simple yet radical idea that the people who live in a city should have the final say over the technology that shapes their lives.
And so we arrive at a final fundamental choice. It's not a choice between using technology and rejecting it. It's a choice of values. The ultimate choice is between a city that is merely smart and a city that is also, and more importantly, just. Technology is an incredibly powerful tool. It can be used to build a prison of perfect efficiency, or it can be used to build a more equitable, democratic, and humane world. It can serve either vision. The decision, well, that's ours. Go on a watch marathon of our playlist with friends and colleagues to become a cybersecurity expert. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like and share this video with someone you deeply care about to have a foolproof cyber defense.